On February 15, 1564, Galileo was born in Pisa, Italy. His full name had a musical ring, Galileo Galilei. Yet the great scientist became known by just his first name. Italy honored its most famous citizens that way, including the painter Michelangelo. Even books by Galileo were printed without his last name, and today encyclopedias list him simply as Galileo. He was born into an exciting age known as the Renaissance. Discovery was in the air. Europe was exploding with a renewed interest in the arts and science. In 1564, the English writer William Shakespeare was born, and Michelangelo died. Both men, along with Galileo, went down in history as geniuses of the Renaissance. The printing press, invented in 1454, allowed books to be mass-produced instead of being copied by hand, one by one. With more books, more people began to read. The Renaissance. In ancient times, Greece and Rome fostered the arts, science, and philosophy. But after the fall of Rome around 500 AD, advances in Europe slowed to a crawl. The period became known as the Dark Ages. Then, hundreds of years later, came the Renaissance. Renaissance comes from a French word meaning rebirth. It was a cultural movement that started in Italy about 1300, spread through Europe, and lasted about 300 years. Learning and the arts took great leaps forward. Artists and philosophers looked to ancient Greece and Rome for inspiration. Artists such as Michelangelo and Leonardo da Vinci created beautiful paintings, sculpture, and architecture. With improved seagoing instruments, explorers bravely set sail for uncharted lands. Christopher Columbus arrived in the New World of the Americas in 1492. Ferdinand Magellan's crew sailed around the globe, returning in 1522. And in 1607, when Galileo was 43, settlers arrived in Jamestown and founded one of the first English settlements in North America. Pisa was a beautiful old city by the river Arno. Its cathedral was already 5 centuries old when Galileo was born. Pisa's most famous landmark stood, or rather tilted, beside the cathedral. It was called the Leaning Tower because it looked ready to topple at any moment. The Leaning Tower of Pisa. In 1178, workers started to build a bell tower behind the Cathedral of Pisa. Unfortunately, the tower was built on soft, sandy soil that couldn't hold up the tower's weight. Even before the tower was finished, it began leaning heavily to one side. Today, Pisa is known worldwide for its leaning tower. Galileo was the firstborn child. His mother and father both came from noble Italian families. However, that didn't mean the couple was wealthy. Galileo's father, Vincenzo, worked hard as a musician. He sang, played the lute, wrote songs, and taught. Vincenzo also wrote books about music theory. His books stirred up trouble. Songwriters were supposed to follow strict rules for composing, but Vincenzo questioned the rules. He even added notes to the scale. Old masters tried to stop one of his books from being published. Vincenzo, however, was able to push it into print. "I wish to be allowed freely to question in search of truth," he said. Young Galileo listened carefully. Years later, he would be bold and outspoken too. Even as a boy, Galileo was gifted. His curiosity had no limits. He took apart machines to see how they worked. And he invented clever little toys and moving gadgets of his own. Galileo also spent hours and hours learning music and drawing. His father taught him to play the lute. This stringed instrument was as popular then as guitars are now. Playing the lute became a lifelong passion for Galileo. From tutors, he learned to draw in perspective, which meant things looked as if they were in three-dimensional space. He practiced drawing objects and scenes until they looked perfectly lifelike. Years later, Galileo's art skills would come in very handy.